During the 19th and early 20th centuries, a single nation held sway over a vast empire spanning territories across every continent, from India to Canada, with dominions like Australia and large swaths of Africa and the Caribbean under its control. It was often said the sun never set on this British Empire, as there was always a colony where daylight still shone. Simply put, it dominated much of the planet, and its currency, the pound sterling, wielded such power that it served as the world's reserve currency. It was the equivalent of today's dollar. The United Kingdom spearheaded the Industrial Revolution, spread its language, culture, and traditions globally, and earned both respect and fear from powers such as Spain, France, and Germany. However, recent years have seen narratives and news about the UK revolving around stagnation or decline. This leads to some crucial questions. How is it that the birthplace of free trade and the Industrial Revolution is seemingly in decay? And why was it unable to capitalize on its departure from the European Union? To grasp the present situation, we must revisit the decline of that British Empire. Through the 1800s and well into the 1900s, London reigned supreme as the financial and commercial hub of the world. British coal, steel, railways, and textiles flooded international markets. The British Royal Navy ruled the seas, safeguarding these global trade routes, and the pound sterling was a paragon of stability. However, the advent of World War I in 1914 marked the beginning of Britain's weakening. Despite the United Kingdom emerging victorious, the economic and human toll was staggering. The war left the nation deeply in debt, causing the pound sterling to lose credibility as the US dollar gained prominence. The Second World War exacerbated this decline because, again, the UK found itself on the winning side, but the conflict left its cities bombed and its economy teetering on the brink of collapse. To rebuild, it had to embrace aid from the Marshall Plan, becoming even more reliant on American influence. Further, a shortage of resources for maintaining armies and managing colonies triggered their gradual independence, diminishing London's sway. Consequently, the conflict drained a significant portion of national resources, restricting investment capacity. Simultaneously, the independence of its global colonies created greater obstacles to accessing affordable raw materials and resulted in the loss of key markets, such as India, for its exports. By the 1970s, the UK grappled with internal challenges, union strikes, soaring inflation, and the oil crisis. An atmosphere of social unrest prevailed. Seeking to enhance its access to the European Common Market and rejuvenate its economy, it joined the European Economic Community, EEC, in 1973, the precursor to the European Union. Yet, from the outset, its membership was repeatedly questioned. As early as 1975, just 3 years after joining the EEC, a referendum was held to confirm or reject its membership, remaining won by a substantial 67% margin, but opposition and indecision persisted. With Margaret Thatcher's arrival in 1979, the UK was still reeling from a severe economic and social crisis. The European Economic Community was viewed primarily as a common market, a space to boost exports and investments. Essentially, Thatcher aimed to open markets for British production and services, dismantle trade barriers, and gain easier access to the rest of Europe. As long as integration focused on strengthening the free market, Thatcher was at ease, believing it could aid economic recovery. However, the pivotal moment arrived when European integration began to extend beyond the mere common market. The European Commission, then headed by Jacques Delors, started to evolve into a more political and social bloc, meaning beyond its original free trade philosophy. Thatcher sensed the formation of something akin to a European superstate, and it was in a speech in Bruges, Belgium, that she declared her opposition to political union and the concept of a Europe governed by a supranational bureaucracy as it clashed with her ideals of national sovereignty and British autonomy. One of the sentences in her speech was, "We want the European community be more open, with more free market, and not with more centralism and regulation." This speech marked a turning point, and opposition to the European Union became ingrained in a faction of the Conservative Party, which would later champion the Brexit referendum in 2016. During the 1990s and 2000s, the European Union continued its expansion with the accession of Central and Eastern European countries. For British Eurosceptics, this growth meant more regulations, increased budgetary contributions, and rising immigration from the new member states. Similarly, the UK Independence Party gained traction, pressuring Conservatives to adopt an increasingly critical stance towards the EU to avoid losing voters. So in response to this party's rise, David Cameron pledged in 2013 that, if he won the 2015 elections, he would call a referendum to renegotiate the relationship with the European Union. And indeed, Cameron won the elections and kept his promise. In June 2016, the UK, with 51.9%, voted to leave the European Union. For some on the British right, this outcome symbolized liberation from a bureaucratic burden and a chance to pursue more favorable trade deals with global powers. The official narrative promised a bright, optimistic future with Brexit, achieving greater control over borders and immigration. Also, more command over taxes and tariffs, and a more adaptable economy rooted in the free market, mirroring Hong Kong or Singapore. Essentially, the UK could evolve into a sort of global free trade hub. In theory, Brexit was meant to be the catalyst for a new era of growth and national pride. However, the UK's economic and political landscape has not followed the upward trajectory many anticipated. The British economy is showing signs of stagnation. Public debt has surged significantly. Record inflation in previous years has driven up the cost of living. The government has even had to provide assistance, such as payments of €600 to those most in need. Net immigration reached record levels in 2023, exceeding 900,000 people. This has sparked divisions within society, with some political and social sectors concerned about overburdened public services, housing, healthcare, and education. In fact, over the past 2 decades, housing prices have outpaced wage growth. In cities like London, buying a home is nearly impossible for most young people and middle-income families, and the national health system is facing a crisis, with waiting lists surpassing 7.5 million pending procedures in England, accompanied by strikes demanding wage increases to offset rising prices and a staffing shortage with over 100,000 vacancies. As evident post-Brexit, the country did not experience accelerated growth, nor did it achieve greater border control. The remaining question is, therefore, why did the United Kingdom fail to leverage its exit from the European Union? Primarily for 4 reasons. First, the negotiation process with the European Union revealed that the United Kingdom lacked a clear strategy. In other words, many pro-Brexit leaders focused on winning the referendum, but not on creating a clear post-Brexit game plan. The subsequent governments of David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak held differing views on tariffs, borders, and trade relations with Europe. This political instability deterred investments, as businesses, facing uncertainty about regulations and the terms of trade with the EU, opted to postpone investments or relocate to other countries. Then, each prime minister improvised based on internal pressures and short-term urgencies. Secondly, while the goal was to break free from EU rules, the European Union remains the UK's largest natural trading partner. Consequently, without a smooth post-Brexit agreement, customs barriers emerged, hindering the export of British goods. Thirdly, some agreements were signed with countries like Australia and New Zealand, but their real impact on British trade is limited. The idea of forging a trade agreement with the United States did not progress as expected, with negotiations stalled since 2023, and with India, they have been paused since 2022. And finally, just as Brexit came into force, the pandemic struck. This disrupted the global supply chain, affecting production, transport, and public spending. Combined with the energy crisis triggered by the Ukraine war, this left the British economy in a vulnerable state. Thus, it can be concluded that the economic stagnation and the social and political tensions stem not solely from the decision to leave the European Union, but from the failure to capitalize on that freedom and autonomy, attributable to the absence of a definite and coherent post-Brexit strategy. Therefore, to harness the regulatory autonomy post-Brexit, the United Kingdom needs a long-term trade and industrial policy to create a more predictable environment for entrepreneurs and investors. That's the video, and thank you very much for reaching the end.